You're listening to the Wheatgrass and Champaign podcast with holistic entrepreneurs Mandi Rose and Kathleen Hupp. Tune in each Wednesday to discuss holistic approaches to a happier, more fulfilling life and glittery distractions from the mundane. Nothing is off limits in this series, so grab your glass of champagne or your shot of wheatgrass and prepare for complete and fabulous chaos.
Welcome back to another episode of Wheatgrass and Champaign. We're happy you're tuning in again.
Hi, everyone.
This week we have an amazing guest who's going to dive into myofascial release, lots of trigger point therapies, and what you need to do to prevent all kinds of misalignments, surgical procedures, etc.
Yes, Andi is joining us today. She is a friend of mine, and I met her by getting some deep body work done when I was having some misalignments from working out. So she is definitely my go-to girl when it comes to postural misalignments, tension in my body, or feeling a lot of pain that I know that I can treat without medication. And so she's going to share her genius with us today. She's a licensed massage therapist, but she actually specializes in sports massage, trigger point therapy, and myofascial release. She owns Clearwater Sports Massage. You can look it up. It's clearwatersportsmassage.com, and it's in Palm Harbor, Florida. And not only today do we get to interview her, but she's actually joined by Bree, which is her partner in all things in life, including business. And her genius is massage therapy, but specifically neurosomatic massage. So enjoy the interview, guys. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So for someone who's just gotten like a basic massage, doesn't know the difference, can you kind of share what you do and why it's different? And
so basic massage, you kind of have a difference with getting more of like a spa therapist that's there to relax you and to maybe bring you more into a parasympathetic state, which is more like a relaxed sleeping state. That's your nervous system that kicks on when you're sleeping. Whereas you're not going to really relax during one of my sessions.
Nope.
What we do is mostly, we consider it corrective body work. So if you have an injury, if you have a dysfunction or a limitation, let's say, for example, you're a CrossFit athlete and you just can't get the bar over your head because your shoulder mobility is not there. Mm-hmm. We can increase your shoulder mobility. We can treat injuries and chronic pain issues that a lot of our society tends to treat with painkillers or corticosteroid injections or even surgery. And a lot of times those things can be prevented, reversed, or if you had the surgery, you had the procedure and it didn't work, you can try these treatments and oftentimes still get to 100% or at least as far as we could get you if you had, let's say, plates put in your shoulder or something like that. And once there's something foreign in the body, it's a little harder to get to 100%.
That's really cool. I think that's huge for people to know that there's this option in this route. And that's what Kathleen and I always preach, that there's always these alternatives. And unfortunately, they're not as well known. And so that's what we're here to kind of educate and share with people. So I think that's a huge point that you make. I absolutely love that. So how do people know if it's for them, right? So if someone has like a hip issue and they're going to their doctor and they're complaining about a hip issue, how are they going to know that massage will help them? You know,
most people don't. I mean, I'll tell you, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Because the muscles need to be worked just like anything else. If you want to, I believe mobility is one of the worst things that can happen to us as we age, is losing our mobility. You can live with heart disease, you can live with diabetes, but guess what? Once you're in a wheelchair, like life is over. Or my grandmother, one of the things I always come back to when I think about mobility is my grandmother was 96 years old. She was going strong. She bent over to pick up a paper towel. Her hamstrings didn't bend. She didn't have the mobility for it. She fell, broke her hip.
Oh my gosh.
And
that happens. I'm sure frequently.
Yeah, and at that age, you don't really come back from it. So mobility is so important. That's quality of life. So I'll say it's for everybody.
Good.
And everybody needs it. But also, if you're having plantar fasciitis, you can treat it with this. If you're having migraines, a lot of the times, you can treat it with this. If you're having rotator cuff issues and pain, it's for a lot of the medical issues that our society, like I said, we prescribe drugs for it or we prescribe surgery for it, and it's not necessarily needed. The body has the ability to heal itself in so many ways.
Yes.
If you just have the right tools.
So let's back up a step. And can you explain the difference between like a comfortable massage that people think of when they think of having a spa day and the difference of that and myofascial release?
So like a regular massage, you're definitely thinking about like the massage envy, the relaxing, like she was talking about. So that's going to be more of like that soft touch. But the difference between corrective body work, no matter what type of corrective body work it is, it's usually unpleasant in the sense that you're going to be going through a lot of dysfunction that's ending up causing your initial pain, that symptom that you came in to get that massage for in the first place.
Yep.
So our sessions are going to be consisting of, instead of the soft dental touch, it's going to be more of like it's called trigger point therapy specifically. And we can get into that a little bit later and discuss what that is. But it's going to be almost like a deep tissue if you've ever had one of those, but very slow.
But very, very
I avoid
slow.
those, but okay. So
Nope, I avoid those.
I know I hear the word, it might be painful, and I'm like, oh, no, thanks. Let's go for the soft one.
Yeah.
I'll take the bunny massage.
Well, that's what most people think. But I mean, and that is to say also that pain does not always bring you a good result. There's a certain threshold of pain that you can take that is good for the body. And then there's going over that threshold, which you're not doing any good at that point.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I step in there?
Yeah.
So when I'm working on someone, I have a lot of people tell me like, oh, well, I can't recommend my wife or my husband because they couldn't handle this, and we work with your pain tolerance. So if on a scale of 1 to 10, and 8 is where you want to pull away, you want to keep someone between a 5 and a 7. And if they're a higher pain tolerance person, their tissue might release over around that 7. But if they're a lower pain tolerance personality type, you're going to keep them more around a 5 during a session. Because if they're tensing, that tissue's not going to release. You have to be able to relax. So it's not completely uncomfortable. We're making jokes, but it's not completely uncomfortable.
Right.
So interesting to me. So when you're doing like the trigger point, you're kind of saying that you're, pushing on the tissues and you're getting deep into the body. Is it mostly, I think that's something we get kind of confused about. We see the skin and then we know there's muscle and then there's bones. There's something in between there, right? The fascia system. Can you kind of explain that a little bit? Because I think that's misunderstood by a lot of people.
I love fascia.
Yeah, so let's let Bree talk about fascia, and then we actually should talk about trigger points and adhesions so that you know what we're actually treating.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, so fascia is this really cool woven system that's literally attached to every single thing in our body. Fascia surrounds every single nerve fiber, every single arterial vessel, like literally everything that's in your body that is made of tissue is surrounded by what's called fascia. Okay. And all of this fascia, kind of, because it's all interconnected and it's touching every single little tiny, the smallest functional unit of every single tissue, it makes you think about like what one part of the tissue is doing and how it's affecting, maybe another piece of your body. So like say that I could have something happening down in my shoulder, and the fascia's a little upset near my shoulder, and it actually ends up impinging something in my wrist because all of that fascia is around all the smallest units, and it actually is it's kind of like a, what metaphor am I looking for? I guess
like a
it's
spider web. Like
like
if
a
you pulled it
spider
on
web.
one side,
Yeah,
the other part of the
exactly.
spider web would get distorted.
Yeah,
right?
or like a tensegrity unit. That's a good thing. Tensegrity. So if you can see a model like that, if you move one thing, everything else moves.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't think most people know what that is.
I was about to ask. I was like, I feel really silly, but what is that?
So if you want a visual of fascia, one of the things I like to tell people is, if you're cleaning a chicken breast or if you're getting ready to cook a chicken breast, you know that little thin white, like almost skin looking, even though it's a boneless, skinless chicken breast, it looks like there's a little skin. That's fascia. Yeah. And that holds everything together.
So on the chicken, that's super thin, right?
Yep. And that's super thin on you.
Really? I always thought our fascia was thick and meaty.
No, that's like your fat.
Really?
That is like that.
Yeah.
Shows what I know. No, I knew the concept of it. I just thought it was bigger than it is, I guess.
You would think so, but you also have to think that it has to be so thin and so small that it wraps literally everything.
Yeah.
Every muscle fiber that goes into the whole muscle. I mean, and you can think about like hundreds of and even thousands of fibers within one muscle. So just think about how much fascia.
And each individual fiber has its own like little encasing of fascia.
Exactly.
And organs too, right?
And
your organs have
Yeah.
fascia.
Every single organ, like,
Mind blowing.
yeah. It's really neat.
It's the envelope of the body.
So
Yes.
essentially, if I'm like understanding this, the fascia then can get like tightened or it can get like distorted in some way, right? Is that happen just from like posture imbalance? Does it happen from trauma? Like how is our fascia getting messed up, right? Like, cause I'm assuming as we're younger, it's like fluid and it's in perfect working order. And then as we get older, it gets all jacked up. So what are we doing to jack up our fascia so we can prevent it?
I mean, it is your everyday, and it's your posture. It's the way that you move about. It's your repetitive motions that you have. Say you're a painter and you're doing an overhead motion all day, every day, 5 days a week. Your fascia is going to be a little upset in that one arm that you keep doing that motion in. But other than that, I mean, you've got not just your everyday, but if you're someone that has extracurricular activities that are, active activities, obviously you have risk of injury. And at that point, you're definitely going to have something going on.
Okay, that makes sense.
And for example, if you pull a muscle, if you have a lot of adhesions in an area, the fascia and the muscles can kind of stick together. I don't know if you've ever heard of the fascia blaster and all of that kind
I think
of
it's
stuff.
really popular, the fascia blaster.
It is. And I'm not here to dog it because especially for that market of people who wouldn't be into body work necessarily, they're kind of getting drawn in through the cellulite aspect of it. They're getting work done. They're getting blood flow in. They're healing. And one of the reasons why it helps with cellulite is because your cellulite are little pockets of stuck fascia.
Oh, that makes sense. So if we can kind of visualize how cellulite works, it's like we were saying with the spider web, right? It's just like pulling a little thread.
Stuck thread.
And stuck thread, and then it like dimples everything else in there. And so I can only imagine if that is then happening around organs, how much that can impact.
Oh, most definitely.
Right?
Well, what you get into at that point, and this was a perfect segue into, I'm going to explain trigger points and adhesions to you.
Please.
Is those little stuck pockets, they're ischemic areas also. So it's little areas of the tissue that's lacking blood flow. And therefore lacking oxygen. So it can't repair, it can't heal.
Oh, okay.
And the longer an area is without blood flow and without oxygen, it deteriorates.
Okay.
And that can happen to your organs also.
Wow.
And it does cause a lot of organ dysfunction. And we're slowly starting to realize that in the United States that, we need to also treat the organs just as much as we need to treat the muscle.
Okay.
Back to the fascia blaster and how that's good for circulation. How is myofascial release good for circulation, and why is that so important?
About the circulation system, it's a circulator system, so it's a transport system. And the only way that nutrients and oxygen and all the vitamins and minerals that we take, that's the only way that they get transported to the areas that they need to go is when you have blood flow. So then when you release the fascia and you allow blood flow to get to that area, you're allowing it to heal itself. You're allowing for the oxygen to get there and for there to be cellular respiration and all that good stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally.
Kinda? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably why a lot of people get like injuries too when their fascia starts sticking and they're not getting the proper vitamins and minerals to a certain area. So like, let's say it's like your legs, for example, you know, if you're getting a lot of tightness in the legs and the hamstrings, the quads and all that, and then you're not taking care of it, you can get probably knee injuries and things like that down the road, right?
Absolutely.
Everything is connected.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. So when someone comes into you and they have, let's just pick like a hip imbalance, for example, do you necessarily just treat the hip, or is this like a full body thing that you have to look at like systemically?
It depends on the person and what they're wanting to get out of it.
Okay.
If I have a triathlete that comes in and they say, you know, I'm having a lot of pain in my hip, what can you do for it? I'm running an Ironman in 3 weeks.
Okay.
I'm just going to work the muscles to relieve that hip and get them back into that sport. If someone is coming in and wanting to, let's say a bodybuilder, and they want to make sure that their frame is completely balanced so that all of their muscles are developing equally, we're going to treat the whole body.
Okay.
If someone has scoliosis, you're going to treat the entire body.
Yeah.
You have to balance the entire structure.
And with scoliosis, as an example, are you diving into organs as well? Like organs, tissues, joints, like literally everything?
Oh yeah, everything's connected by fascia.
Yeah.
So
It goes back to that.
Yeah, it really
Crazy.
does. It really does go back to fascia, because if everything is interconnected, everything is interconnected and therefore plays a part on each other.
Domino effect.
It really is. It's really cool how the body works and all of its redundancy and things like that.
Yeah.
So can we do like an example just to kind of help set the picture for someone? So let's say I came in with like a migraine, right? And so you were talking a little bit about like trigger points, right? So does that mean there's like a certain part on my body that you would press if I have a migraine? And where would that be? Like just as general examples.
So a general migraine treatment would be, I would treat your traps, upper traps specifically, scalenes, suboccipital triangle, and some of the cervical muscles. You know, it's mostly the muscles around the neck that connect to the head. Sometimes there's trigger points in the thin muscles in the forehead, your frontalis. There's trigger points in your eyebrows that can cause pain in your eyeballs. So it just depends on it just depends on what symptoms you're having. If you come in and you tell me I have pain right here, right in the center of my forehead, and I get my migraines right there, I'm going to treat a different group of muscles than I would treat if you said I have pain in the back of my head.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a lot different, kind of going back to like when you get like a soft tissue or deep tissue massage. When I've gotten deep tissue and I say like, oh, I'm getting pain in like my quads, they're massaging right at the quad, you know, usually. Or if I say, oh, my calves have really been hurting, they're like, you know, doing some massaging in the calf muscle. But with trigger point, it doesn't necessarily mean you're in that exact spot, right? Like, because you're saying it's connected.
Yeah, no. And when we talk about trigger point therapy, we have to talk about trigger points and adhesions. We mentioned what fascia is, but a trigger point is a localized area of ischemia that we already talked about, a little area that's lacking blood flow. And that can distort the fascia. That distorts the muscle tissue.
Okay.
A lot of times, let's use the example of tennis elbow. So if you're having tennis elbow, if you treat the triceps, you'll find trigger points or adhesions or both in the triceps that are shortening the muscle and pulling on the tendon where the tendon inserts where you're having your pain.
Yep. That makes so much sense.
So with trigger points, is there one group of people that is more susceptible to getting them, or one job type or demographic or athletes?
If you're not drinking water, it's more than likely that you're going to be one of those people that quote unquote gets them more often or more regularly. But no, nobody really has. As far as I know, and as far as like studies go and whatnot, nobody gets them any more often than anyone else.
Okay.
I can tell you that from my experience, this sounds odd, but I've been touching muscles for 10 years now. And in my experience, people who pay attention to their water intake, people who pay attention to their macro and their micronutrients, and people who work out regularly, even though they might have tight muscles and they might need, let's say what we would consider our deep tissue, like that's the closest you're going to get to with us, which would be our sports massage session. They don't have as many trigger points. Yeah. They don't. A couple of my clients that I'm like, where are all your trigger points? They're actually paleo.
Oh, interesting.
And they carry around a gallon jug of water all day.
Do they do a full gallon every day?
You should have half your body weight in ounces a day.
Right.
If you want to stay hydrated. But most average size people, if you get a gallon in a day, you're good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I strive.
Yeah. That's what we preach on this podcast. Drink your water, then your wheatgrass, then your champagne.
Exactly.
That's the order.
I like that order.
So when someone comes in and they do the therapy session with you, are they typically sore afterwards for a day or two? Is that's kind of expected, right?
Yeah. I usually tell people you're going to be sore for 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm. And that's normal. That's part of the body
You need to drink
healing.
a lot of water. You need to ice. And you want to think about it in the same way as if you had a really hard workout, you're going to be sore for a few days. The muscles have to recover.
Yeah.
That's just normal. So you do get a lot of people who shy away from that once you tell them like, oh, well, I'm going to make you sore for a few days. But it's after that day 3, you're like, wow, my shoulder moves again, or wow, that pain is gone and I can sleep on my shoulder all night without it waking me up.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It kind of is this comparison to when we talk about detoxing, right? It might be a little uncomfortable when all the toxins get released out of the tissues and get into the bloodstream. You might feel a little more tired than normal or a little detox symptoms, but 2-3 days later, you feel fantastic.
Yeah.
So same thing, I think, like you're saying with the body work, you kind of got to give those muscles a little jolt and then they can go back to where they need to be.
Yeah. And also when you're a little farther along in your treatment, say that you're planned out for 6 to 12 treatments. After treatment, like 4 or 5, it stops hurting so bad after you go home. It's a lot easier on your body after you've had it done for a little while.
That's awesome.
Your body's also resetting from the dysfunction, and your central nervous system has to realize like, my leg's in a different place than it used to be. And sometimes that can be a little overstimulating that first couple of days of that first session or 2.
Yeah, just readjusting to your leg being like a centimeter to the left.
Yeah. And if we're talking specifically about athletes, like the triathletes that I work on, or the people who are hardcore into CrossFit, you're talking people who train 6-7 days a week, 2+ hours a day sometimes. If I treat their rotator cuff, the next day, you do not go back in and lift your weight and act like nothing happened yesterday, because as far as your body's concerned, there's new muscle fibers to use. It's in a new position. So I always have to tell my hardcore athletes, like, I need you to have a rest day after, for sure. Don't skip it or you're going to regret it. And when they skip it, they do regret it. But you can think of it like, this is a visual I like to give. If you were a baseball pitcher, and I treated your rotator cuff, and before you came in, you threw a strike straight down the center. Now when your body goes to throw that same motion, it might be dropped in 30 degrees to the left because there's new muscle fibers involved. And those new muscle fibers aren't going to be as strong. So when you have one of these treatments, let's say we completely clean out your glutes. Before you go back in and you do your squats, start with just the bar. Start with just your body weight. Make sure everybody's activating. Make sure everybody's working because we opened up new tissue. Don't throw on all the weight that you were doing 2 days before and go ham, because you might cause another injury, and then we'll have to work on that.
Wow, that makes so much sense, because like you were saying, you release these trigger points that have been blocking blood flow to a certain area, and then all of a sudden they're exposed and they have to start working again. It's like waking up a sleeping something, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm here to party.
The other really cool thing is you see performance go up. So I always tell people, especially my weightlifters and my bodybuilders, like, you might have a PR after this, and they get real excited. So
it's worth the pain.
Yeah, it's worth the pain at that point if there's a new PR in the future. So especially with Bree, she's down for that. So one of the reasons being is, have you ever felt your muscle twitch out of nowhere? Like, have you ever been laying in bed and you feel like your hamstrings twitch or you feel your calf twitch? There's a trigger point in there. And that trigger point is sending a signal for those muscles to spasm. It's almost like a TINS unit. Have you ever used a TINS unit?
No. What is that?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
One of those little electrical stimulation units that makes the muscle twitch.
No.
Is it like the thing that you could see on like infomercials where they like put it on your abs and you get a 6-pack by laying on the bed?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Does it
pretty
work?
much. So, not really.
Okay.
But it's the reason I tell you that is because that trigger point is spasming in your calves. And if you're a runner and that trigger point is spasming, you're losing glycogen. You're losing energy in that muscle tissue. So when we clean those out, instead of starting your workout or starting your training with 50% of your glycogen or 70% of your glycogen, you're starting off with more, or possibly once the trigger point is completely gone and the spasming has stopped, you're starting off with all of your glycogen storages and you have all of your power.
That's awesome. So, question, since you work with a lot of athletes and what you're saying is if you are, performing any kind of athletic activity, it doesn't necessarily have to be like CrossFit, even if you just run for enjoyment.
Right.
It's important to keep up on the body work and to make sure that the body is always functioning properly. What if you're just starting out to work out? Let's say you've been inactive and you haven't exercised in 2 years and you want to get back in the gym and you want to lose weight. Should someone come to see you or do a body work first before they ever set foot in the gym to make sure that their posture is right, to make sure that their body is able to perform?
Well, if Bree doesn't mind me, I'm going to give her the mic again in a second. I'm going through that similarly right now. We started back in the gym and doing weight training, and I'm noticing dysfunctions that I didn't have the last time that we were in the gym. For example, being on the row machine. When I pulled back and tried to activate my rhomboids and feel my shoulder blades pull completely to the spine, my right shoulder blade, the bottom corner, the inferior side, wasn't coming back to my spine. And I'm like, what is this? Is my rhomboid not activating? And what it was is my pec minor on that shoulder is so tight that it's pulling my shoulder out of alignment. So as I'm treating that pec minor, that shoulder blade is lining back up. It's important to work out with as little dysfunction as possible so that you don't continue to create and perpetuate dysfunction. Mm-hmm. So I do believe people should be aware of that. We could definitely do an assessment for you and see maybe where you're out of whack and how everything's lined up. And we could tell you, these muscles are pulling you this way or this is happening this way. Bree might be able to go on a better spiel about that.
Well, no, not necessarily better, but just in the sense that I don't feel like you have to do either or before the other. I don't feel like you have to start getting your body work taken care of before you start exercising. I think both kind of go hand in hand with each other. I think they're both really important for health. Body work is awesome, but you're not necessarily going to be doing weight-bearing exercise. Exercise is awesome because you're still getting blood flow to areas. And actually, sometimes when you're pushing through, you might actually open up a area that had a bunch of scar tissue or something. So now you're getting blood flow there. That's not a bad
that's a good
thing,
point.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing. And like I said, exercise is really important for health. So I think they both go hand in hand. However, if you do start exercising and this is your first time back in a little while, like you were saying, I definitely think it's probably a good idea within your first couple of months before you start actually getting into heavy weight and things like that. Definitely start taking a look at your dysfunctions and start trying to get them handled before, like Andi said, before you start perpetuating them and making them worse.
Well, I was going to ask, I think it's amazing that you were able to pinpoint when you were doing the row machine exactly what wasn't aligned. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that comes with your extensive knowledge of the body. But for someone like me who isn't sure what all's going on in there with my muscles, would you recommend I just walk into your clinic and say, hey, assess me and make sure I'm good to go? Or is there a way that I could easily kind of look and assess different movements and how they're acting in my body? Is there a beginner's guide to that?
Yeah.
We're working on it. Knowledge is power. So really learning about your muscles and learning their actions and their attachments, that helps. And I believe that if you're in the gym and you want to get the most out of it, you should know what muscles you're working anyway.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be guessing. If you're doing bench press, you should feel your pecs activating. And if you want to build a nice, fully round pec, and by the way, for girls, that'll give you a boob lift.
Yes.
If you want to build a nice full pec and not just build the top portion, you got to be able to feel that whole muscle activate. It's a huge muscle. Same thing with the traps. You want to be able to feel everything activate, because let's say you had a perfect body, but you can't feel those muscles and you don't really know what muscles you're working. You just get on the machine and yank away.
Yeah.
You're not going to be developing an even muscle. You will create distortions at that point. Or you'll overdevelop one area. Well, that's a distortion. You'll overdevelop something and underdevelop something else.
You'll have one leg stronger than the other and you'll be walking in circles.
Yeah, there you go.
Definitely. I want to for anyone listening, a lot of people have followed me on Instagram and stuff and seen I worked out a lot and I built up a lot of muscle mass. Even though I'm a personal trainer, even though I'm well aware of muscle groups, it's when I'm working out, it was still hard for me to assess my own posture. Yeah. So for someone who's not as familiar, it's very easy to get out of alignment and not doing the proper range of motion very quickly. And for me, I noticed even with my pelvis, I had a total anterior tilt. And I didn't catch it in time, but I still was in the gym. And all I kept thinking was I'm building a butt, I'm building some glutes. That's I was just so driven and so focused. That was my goal. And as I perpetuated and was able to squat heavier and able to do deadlifts that were heavier, I was just literally perpetuating that anterior tilt until the point that my lower back couldn't take it anymore. And then my abs were distorted and then it led into the organs. So I'm the perfect example of being smart and knowing about my muscles, but still not being I guess self-care enough.
Maybe not listening enough.
Yeah, I wasn't. I was just kind of just tuning out where I'm I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And then my body crashed. Mm-hmm. And I just, if you guys are listening, please don't let that happen to you, because coming back from that, I literally am starting from ground zero. I had to lose all my muscle mass. And now before I even go back in the gym, I have to correct all these postural misalignments, shoulders, lower back, these knees even. I didn't even realize my knees were bending outwards. And, if you want to be an athlete or you enjoy running or you want to kind of get to your next level of performance, you have to take a pause and really address, the body. It's magical.
Take it easy for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Goes along with what we preach is listen to your body.
As you start working out, so someone might start day one of working out and not have that body, mind-body connection quite yet because you haven't been moving as much. Your muscles aren't firing or activating. But as you get in the gym and you start doing motions over and over, it's kind of like yoga too. Once you get into the flow and you've done it enough times, the body just kind of starts activating. And so same thing, if you never, ever, ever do push-ups, but you start doing them over time, you're going to start recognizing oh, I just felt a little stronger in this part of my body. And so that strength will then activate the mind and then you start feeling it and it's a perpetual thing.
Yeah.
So what I loved about coming to you for a session, Andi, is when we were done, you gave me homework. And I think that was so important and so vital because it made me feel empowered and it was something I could do in between my sessions with you. So can you kind of share with us a little bit, what's the most common homework you give to people? What's something that our listeners can even start doing today?
For sure. One of the, I would say, most common issues people complain about is their sciatic bothering them. Mm-hmm. Hip pain. I mean, who doesn't sit all day? So there's a chair stretch where if you're sitting in a chair, if you have a desk job, cross your ankle over your knee, just like a stereotypical sit. Most people might get yelled at and told to sit like a lady and cross their legs a little bit more. But it's that open leg sit where your ankle's over your knee and you just lean forward. Try and keep your back straight and you lean forward. And you'll feel your hip stretch. You'll feel that pull in the hip. Another thing is to use your foam roller or your lacrosse ball. I've actually fallen in love with a medicine ball. I have a 6-pound medicine ball that's hard. And it really gets into the hips well and the hamstrings. And it feels much better than a foam roller. So when you graduate from your foam roller, that's where it's at.
Oh my goodness.
So if you're going to do some myofascial release, same position where you're sitting, except you're on the floor. You have that knee crossed, almost like you're going to do that piriformis stretch that most people do lying down. and you would put the hip that the leg is up on the ball or on the foam roller until you find that trigger point. And you should feel that trigger point radiate or burn or tingle. There should be some similar sensation of pain, and then you know you got it. But if it's on a scale of 1 to 10, if an 8 is where you're like, not doing this, back off. Back off to a 5 to a 7. If you're more comfortable at your 5, stay there. If you're more comfortable at your 7, stay there. It doesn't matter as long as the tissue will release. And you'll know if you're doing it correctly if in about 15 seconds, and don't count fast, don't be one of those people, normal 15 seconds. If it starts to release and it feels a little bit better, it won't be completely gone. You'll still feel that sensation, but then you'll know kind of if you've got the right pressure. In 30 to 60 seconds, you should just be feeling mostly localized pressure. And then you move on to the next one. And usually it's not very far. It feels like you move like a centimeter in one direction or another, north, south, east, west, and you find another spot. We call it circling the dragon because there's always trigger points around trigger points, and you want to kind of clear out that whole area.
Yeah.
Okay, so usually when there's a trigger point, they're all kind of one jammed up mess.
Yeah.
Like like
one clump.
Yeah,
almost.
so if you think of like a traffic jam, it's
Yeah.
like one car is next to another, it's next to another, and it just takes some time to like open up the roadway.
And you don't want to, I guess it's easier to explain this kind of stuff visually. So we started a little Instagram account, Stretch and Roll.
It's amazing. You guys have got to check it out. Like I have got
I want to get that little tool that's like what do you call it? The lacrosse peanut.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
something that
That's
you use on like
yummy.
trigger points on your back.
Yeah.
That looks amazing.
If you want a trick for that, if you don't have a peanut lacrosse ball, you can take 2 tennis balls and
Okay.
either tape them together with kinesio tape or duct tape, or you can shove them in a sock that you've lost its mate. Tie it down real tight.
single sock.
Yeah. Tie it down real tight, cut the excess off, and boom, you've got a mobility peanut.
Oh. Okay.
We're going to link the Instagram account. You guys have got to follow it.
Yeah.
It's way easier to see it. That's one of the reasons I started the Instagram account is because I would spend half an hour sometimes showing people exercises. And then when they came back, they're like, oh, I remembered one. So we started that to really just be able to give homework and support you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't have a lot of muscle soreness or muscle tension, but each one of your moves, I feel like I should be doing a different one every night just to prevent anything and keep everything like loose and limber.
Prevention
So-
is key.
Yeah.
And
Your videos were super helpful.
Absolutely. I'll say like the first time I started stretching for pain relief, I got into yoga in like 2012. I had a lot of hip pain. And at first I was just getting myself out of pain. And when the pain wasn't there, I would not do my stretches. And then it would come back. And one day I finally got over that threshold of the tissue was completely healed through myofascial release and stretching. And I learned that maintenance keeps it away.
Yeah.
So, it does become a part of you. I wouldn't give up on yourself if the first few months you're, I'm going to do it every day. And then you get 3 times in that week. Eventually it'll become part of your life like anything. I mean,
I'm working on that. From our first episode of this year, I said I was going to be able to do the splits by the end of the year.
What
Remember
is your
this?
progress?
I've stretched it's almost April. It's super embarrassing. I keep track of it.
Okay.
I've stretched 5 times.
Oh no.
And it's been 3 months. So
Okay, well that's better than
where
none.
are my accountability partners at? You guys said you were going to text me and message me and remind me.
Whoops.
I posted a very embarrassing photo of me attempting the splits as a before photo on my Instagram. And it is so embarrassing. And this has been my goal for 4 years and I could not be further from the goal. So
Well, you still
help
have
me.
Well, you
8
picked the
months
hardest thing. You could have just picked hamstring flexibility or something. You picked the hardest
When I
thing.
go
all
in,
the way
I go,
down.
and I want it front splits and middle splits. I want it all.
Isn't the middle one the hardest?
When I started, my goal was to be able to lay my face on my knees. When I was having all that body pain in 2012, touching my shins, I felt a stretch.
Yeah.
So it was okay, I'm going to get to my ankles. I'm going to get to my toes. I'm going to be able to grab my feet. I'm going to be able to grab my hands around my feet. And then, it probably took a year of just as often as I could think about it, I was stretching my hamstrings.
So I'm probably not going to get the splits this year.
No. Because if you were religious about it for a couple months, you'd probably be there.
Oh, okay.
You know, the body changes fast. It's just,
I need to be on
had
it.
never gotten into doing my own self-care. And
Regularly.
it took me a year for it to become part of my life.
Ah, that makes sense. So just doing it regularly and being in the habit. That's my goal. So, I mean, I kind of feel like everyone should have a foam roller, right? Like at their disposal at their house and just use it. Even if you're not quite sure what to do, just roll it around.
During our sessions, we will talk to you and I'll hold a trigger point and count and show you like, okay, well, here's your 5 to a 7 and here's the 15 seconds. Is it getting better, worse, or the same? Ask yourself that at 15 seconds when you're on your roller. If it's getting better, keep holding it. At 30 seconds, is it gone? Not quite. Okay, give it a little bit more. At 60, not quite gone. All right, well, let's get off of it and go to one of the surrounding ones.
Okay.
So we don't irritate it.
That makes
But then you
sense.
can come back. And you just have to teach yourself. You have to learn your body, you know? We keep saying that. We keep saying that.
And foam rollers are fairly inexpensive. So if someone can't afford, to come in for a session on a regular with a therapist, or, if they don't maybe have one locally to them that's convenient, a roller is a good option. And they're like $10? I mean, they can't be too much.
Oh, they have them at Five Below also.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to go,
$5.
you want to walk into Five Below and go into their little fitness section, all kinds of toys to treat yourself with.
Ooh, I need
So,
some new yoga stuff.
There you go. It's important. It is really important. And another reason for the Instagram account is because we believe in empowering you and we believe in you being able to take care of yourself. We don't want to be a Band-Aid. We don't want to be a pill. We don't want to be a shot. Teach you to fish kind of a thing. So we believe that long after you know us, you are still going to need body work. And if you don't know how to do it, we didn't really help you.
Yeah.
So
I love that approach because I think so many health practitioners and just people in general who offer any kind of service are selfish with their knowledge because they're like, no, I want people to come through me. I don't want them to know how to do it without me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's wonderful.
that
you guys
doesn't
are
feel good in
empowering.
your heart.
No, it's
That doesn't
terrible.
feel good in your heart
Yeah.
at all. I cannot be that way. Neither of us can be that way.
Especially when it's something so important. Like you were saying, it can, later down in life, when you're 80, you want to have that range of motion. You want to be going for walks with your family. And it's a big deal, that we really neglect our bodies for so long. And then all of a sudden we turn 50 and we're like in a doctor's office and they're telling us to get spine surgery. And it's like, this could have been, just a daily practice of stretching, to get into that. So I love that you're out there educating, advocating, making an Instagram account. I know you guys have a lot of cool stuff in the works. Anything you want to share with us? Any ideas? I mean,
Well, we're working on a couple self-treatment plans.
Cool.
So, for example, being able to teach you how to rehab your rotator cuff. The only thing is it takes trial and error. So it's like, okay, well, what's the average time that the average person has to spend on their foam roller, whether they're, in tune with their body or not, for them to get the results that they need.
Yeah.
So it's a process, but we'll have mobility and pain relief on an app.
oh, cool.
Nice.
Fantastic.
So if you keep up with us, be patient. It takes
coming.
time.
Absolutely.
That's in the works. And right now we have, a lot of trigger point charts that we've illustrated and sketched up just to show you, okay, well, you got your foam roller, you got your lacrosse ball, you got your tennis ball, whatever level you're at, whatever you're using, treat these spots and do it for this many minutes and see how you feel. And like you said earlier, I give homework all the time. We give homework as much as we can because with each individual person, they have their own time frames that they're available. They have their own budget that's available for this. And they have their own also willingness to do their own at-home work. So some people just want you to fix it all.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're going to come twice a week. And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But some people, that one appointment was an expense for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That one appointment was an expense for them. And if I can give you a 6-week treatment plan, I'll write it up for you. And if you'll do it, it'll help.
You mentioned earlier, I think before we started recording, that you had fixed something tied to menstrual cramps. Can you please save the world and elaborate on that?
Ladies, listen up.
So, with all of the in works thing, that is also something that is in works. We are trying to figure out how to treat visceral, so your organs. We're trying to learn how to do that ourselves because as of right now, I only know how to do it to someone. The kind of positions that you have to get in and things like that, like they're very passive. So you can't have like any of your muscles tensed and things like that to be able to get to the organ tissue. But yeah, it's a matter of just working your uterus and working out your uterus is a giant muscle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you work out those knots and things that are in there. You'd be very surprised, very, very surprised in how many are actually in there. And that's what's causing you to have menstrual cramps every month.
Well, yeah, I had always wondered because there's such differences between one woman and the next.
Yeah.
Someone will have a horrible menstrual cycle and the next one will be like, oh, I'm fine every month. Like, what do you... And so I always wondered what caused it. And
it's a matter of different things too, because it doesn't have to be just your uterus. It could be like your intestines that is sending a reflex over to your uterus and telling it to cramp harder because the intestines need to be paid attention to. So the body says, hey, let me spread the message in order to make sure you pay attention.
yeah, let me sound the alarm.
Yeah, exactly. Let me sound the second alarm because you didn't listen to my first one.
Yeah.
But that's in the works. Self-treating your organs is in the works. I promise I'll get that out there soon.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that's a type of massage that I wasn't super familiar with until recently, that you can actually go in and massage
Your organs.
your intestines and your
All of them.
diaphragm and
Including your heart. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't physically get to your heart, but you can do compressions on the chest, light enough but hard enough to actually affect that fascia and the heart muscle and everything.
I do have to say she has 50% improved with 2 treatments, my menstrual cramps every month.
So help me understand this, I guess. So every month our uterus obviously contracts and it's a muscle and it causes us to bleed. Can those contractions alone cause adhesions?
Well, I mean, if you're thinking about if your body is dehydrated and so those muscle fibers aren't getting the correct amount of hydration, or even if maybe you have a dysfunction on your right side of your hip, maybe the right side of your uterus isn't going to be sitting the right way, and therefore maybe your fascia pulls in the wrong way, and then maybe you have a contracture that's stuck in one fiber and then slowly gets bigger.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, just to, I don't know, put in my 2 cents, I guess. Since your uterus is grinding away.
Yeah, literally.
Every month, it's literally grinding pieces of you away.
Yes, for real.
You have to think about it like a muscle that's being moved, and it does. It gets its own buildup. It gets its own adhesions. And I had never, until Bree went to Paul St. John's School, and he's recently, in the last probably decade or 2, added in somatic. It used to be neuromuscular therapy. Now it's neurosomatic, and they treat the organs and they treat the cranium and everything. I never would have thought that I could have treated adhesions in my uterus.
Never. I would.
Or my intestines, but it's all muscle. It's all muscle.
Yeah, it is
muscular.
muscle. I think we
Muscles.
forget that. Like
It's
our
all
heart
muscles.
is a muscle, our brain is a muscle.
Yeah.
Like these organs are muscle tissue, you know?
Everything's muscle tissue. So, definitely don't want to treat your uterus while you're menstruating.
Okay.
Definitely don't want to treat it while you're PMSing because it's just getting larger and waiting to wreck you.
Literally 12 times a year.
So you do need to be aware of your menstrual cycle if you're going to have treatments.
Okay.
But just one more quick thing. Us ladies, everyone who's listening that is a woman, the people who made our anatomy and physiology, like just our history in general about what we know to the body, has been based off of male bodies. Only here recently are we starting to understand what the female anatomy actually looks like and actually like how it all sits inside of our abdomen. I will share something off the mic that is a little risque, that has new studies have came out about our anatomy. It's fascinating that hundreds of years have gone by and we're just now figuring out parts of the female reproductive system.
Interesting that men had, I don't know, educated us on our own anatomy.
Yeah, and you know what I'll tell a lighter version of the story that she's going to share with you guys after. What we're finding out is a lot of the surgeries and stuff that we do on people, we do them based on the male anatomy, like what she's talking about. And have you noticed how a lot of women lose bladder dysfunction, or they have bladder dysfunction after a hysterectomy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That part of that is not knowing how all of the female anatomy and all of our nerve endings and how all of that is sitting.
Oh my goodness.
Because they damage our nerve endings and you lose bladder control.
Oh my gosh.
Personal opinion, anytime you cut something out of your body, you're
Valid.
disrupting.
Valid.
I'm like, don't take a thing. I'll
too.
keep it all.
Yeah. Get those scissors away from me.
I mean,
Scalpel.
that's just like a personal thing. If like a doctor ever told me I had to take my gallbladder, I'd be like, no, it's mine. God gave it to me, and you're not
just gonna
taking
fix
it.
it.
Yes.
One of our friends is talking about gallbladder surgery, and we were like, "Do you have a neurosomatic therapist that can massage that gallbladder?"
Dun, dun, dun.
my
Neurosomatic
goodness.
for the win. Oh, well, thank you so much. I feel like we learned, incredible amount. And if you're listening, go follow their Instagram account. I know you're constantly posting new content. So if there's something on there that you want to know more about, feel free to send them a direct message. Say, hey, can you teach me how to use this for my foam roller? And I'm sure
Absolutely.
you'll get to it eventually. And
Absolutely.
all the other new things in the works, you can stay updated. So I want to kind of leave this for both of you to wrap it up and share any kind of final thoughts, anything that maybe we haven't talked about that you think people must know.
Just drink water and move your body. That's really all it is. And try and get to know it.
Yeah, listen harder.
Yeah.
I would say be more patient when you're doing your self-care.
Love it. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here. And
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you gave so many good tips that people can implement to prevent these problems, but also how to cure them and reverse them when they do get these problems. So thank you.
Thank you for all you do in this world.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I hope you learned so much. And remember, whether you're cleansing or celebrating, cheers!
Thank you for listening to the Wheatgrass and Champagne podcast. If you loved today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Join the Wheatgrass and Champagne community on Instagram, Facebook, and wheatgrassandchampagne.com. Details from this episode can be found in the show notes below. Tune in next Wednesday as we continue to seek the perfect balance between indulging and upgrading. Until then, cheers.